Hello and welcome back to Sentient Mind, our first in-person podcast. How you doing, Jack?
Yeah, excited. We're in person. First time.
Real life people.
Yeah.
So, total lack of AI news again this week.
Classic for 2025.
Nothing going on, nothing to talk about. I'm only joking, of course. A huge week again in AI news. So we're going to talk about OpenAI's new operator model that they launched this week. We're going to talk about the huge $500 billion Stargate project the Trump administration has planned. We're going to talk about the R1 model from DeepSeek and you know what that means for us in the AI industry. And we're going to talk about Google's DeepMind and their Gemini 2.0 flash thinking model. We're also going to have a couple of updates from the UK, or one from the UK, which is the new AI supercomputer that's been built, which I had no idea was happening and has happened. And some news out of Tesla as well. So should we get started with the operator model, Jack?
Yeah, let's do it. So much to get through once again. And this operator update from OpenAI literally came out last night. So Sam Altman and some of his team sat down, announced they were doing a live stream. I certainly hadn't heard any murmurings of this. I think we all knew it's going to come at some point, but I don't think anyone expected it to be yesterday. And they live streamed this new operator release. And yeah, talk to the world about what it was. So what is it, this operator thing? It's being branded as, and I'll just get this right, so it's being described as OpenAI's first AI agent. So what does that mean? It's basically AIs that are capable of doing work independently. You give it a task and it will go away and it will execute it for you. How does it work? So it's going to use its own browser, a browser in the cloud. It can look at web pages, the same web pages that we see as humans, and it can interact with it, doing all of those sort of human type interactions, so clicking, typing, scrolling. It's got the capability to do all of those things. It's currently in research preview, so it's not been officially released. It's not production ready. They've been very, very transparent about that. It will go wrong. It won't be perfect. And so what that actually means is it's only available to pro subscribers and only pro subscribers in the US. I think some other people have got early access to it across the world, but in terms of availability, that's who's going to be able to use it. And I think Sam's explicitly said it's going to be a little while before it comes to Europe because of how tricky it is to get these things through. But it is available now. So those that do have that that pro subscription in the US can use it right now. So they did a live stream and then bam, it was available for people to use. So it's been lots and lots of hype, lots and lots of people using it over the last sort of 12 to 18 hours or so. And yeah, lots of really interesting things coming out. So what kinds of things can it do? That's sort of the big question. So what does it do? In the demo yesterday, what they did is they showed this operator model using OpenTable to book a reservation for you in the restaurant. So that's a classic example that people have been trying out, booking reservations. It can also buy groceries for you. It can fill in expense reports. It can book flights. So anything where you kind of can discreetly imagine going onto a website and doing something, clicking around, searching, typing, if you specify that task, this is the kind of thing that we expect operator to be able to do.
It's a similar sort of interface to like ChatGPT, right? So you just go ahead and type into the box what you want to achieve, and if you described it well enough, hopefully it goes off and does that.
Yes, yeah. So the actual these demos that have come out have been like, it's not many because obviously not that many people have access to it, but the way it works is you type with natural language, or I suppose you probably dictate to it as well, like you'd expect to be able to do in ChatGPT, and then you kind of can see the interface, so you can see what it's doing. You can watch it go away and doing its thing on the browser. You can also like continue to interact with it. I think this is one of the things that is really interesting about it. It's, even though it's branded as an AI agent that can do tasks for you, the way it kind of works right now is almost certainly you need to be supervising it. So a human kind of needs to be watching it the whole time, making sure that it's not doing anything AWOL. And in fact, one of the really important things about it is that it can't do everything. So it does require humans to do sort of sensitive tasks. So if you need to sign in, say, to your reservation app, then it will sort of, in theory, pause, ask the human to input the login details, and then it will resume once you're signed in. So you kind of do need to be watching it, even though it's sort of being branded as this, or it can do everything autonomously on your behalf. So yes, that's the sort of the gist of how it works. I think some interesting things that are coming up. Obviously, talked about the open table example yesterday. That's what they did in the demo. I think there are other sort of integrations, so to speak, that it has already been set up with. But there is certainly an ambition from OpenAI's perspective to integrate with more and more sort of, I guess, very common platforms or like high user traffic platforms. Like they've mentioned eBay, Etsy, Uber, those kind of things, so that as soon as possible it can be used in like where there is real world demand. So again, like in terms of if you can imagine the open table example working, and you can go and see these demos, obviously there's lots of influencers and things showing that functionality. You can also kind of imagine it scrolling through eBay. You can imagine it scrolling through Uber. Book me a taxi for 9 p.m. tonight from here to here. Like that's the kind of thing it should be able to do.
Yeah, because it just uses like screenshots, right? Like sites, like a human, rather than like anything, any additional information provided to it to help it complete its task. But
yeah,
I guess the question is like what, because there is some like apps that are already like available. They call it apps. What does that mean? Does that mean that there's something beyond just browsing the website that they can?
Yeah, so
are they trained on those websites maybe?
Yeah, this is a really interesting point. So in terms of like actually how does it work, what it's using, so it's got a new AI model. It's called the Computer Using Agent, or the CUA. I don't know if people are calling it the CUA. I don't know how you'd say that. But what it's actually doing is it's combining pretty much existing technology. So GPT-4o vision to take screenshots, or basically what it will do is it will take a screenshot of the browser. It will use GPT-4o vision to understand what it is seeing, what's on the screen. Okay, we've got a search bar, we've got an account, we've got a back button, we've got some products maybe listed on the screen. So that's 4o vision, which most people are familiar with how that's working right now. And then it is again using GPT models that already exist to then work out, okay, well, what do I actually want to do? Okay, I want to go and click that button, or I want to go to that search input and type in this thing. So it's nothing that, in terms of the actual like reasoning, that's still like it's using existing stuff, but what this sort of CUA model is doing is pairing all of those things together to produce this sort of more capable output, I suppose. And that's the sort of, when we talk about AI agents up until now, that's very much how people have been describing them, almost like lots of existing models working together to achieve a goal. And I think that is, and obviously it sounds like I'm trivializing quite how impressive that is. Just combine the vision with the reasoning, and bish bash bosh, it's done. Like that is an incredibly impressive thing to even be able to talk about it. And this sort of CUA model is revolutionary. But that's kind of how it's working. I think this terminology of reinforcement learning is sort of how it's working out how to actually do these things. So yeah, that's kind of how it works, and what's sitting behind it from a technology perspective. I think one thing we've kind of touched on it is safety measures. So suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, you're unleashing this thing into the internet, and suddenly it can do things, click things, type things, submit forms, send off all kinds of things, and your mind does run wild with, oh my gosh, that's insane. Like I don't know how many times I heard that's insane in the last few weeks, but that is insane. But OpenAI have put a lot of supposedly a lot of the effort into safety measures. So we talked about if you needed to put in some login details, for example, that right now they've very much forbidden this operator from doing that, and it would go to a human. So some other things that it will do is anything like sending an email. It would ask for verification before it actually went off and did that. So I assume that in a lot of these cases, it wouldn't ever carry out the purchase or attempt to carry out the purchase without the human effectively approving it. And then in terms of what it's like, fully refrained from doing at all is making payments. They talked about job applications, for example. It would never like accept a job on your behalf or commit to some kind of contractual obligation on your behalf. There's a lot of scrutiny around I guess the impact of the action. So before I click submit or whatever, it's very much going to be seeking the human to approve those things. So yeah, that's it. I think the summary from, or the sort of, I think this, how this is being received is like, it's mind blowing. Like, suddenly what we've got is a big commercial, reputable tech company, one of the leaders, OpenAI, releasing what they're branding as an agent. So the first AI agent from OpenAI. Now that is quite a big, certainly from my perspective, that's quite a big landmark to have hit. You think about the roadmap of AI, and where it is that we know that it's going, and the sort of almost the prerequisite targets that need to be hit before we achieve this sort of more, the more nebulous stuff that we've discussed a lot before. The first AI agent being released by a big commercial tech company is very much on that roadmap, and so suddenly we've ticked that box. That is effectively what this represents, is a tick in that box.
Unless you say that Claude did it already as well.
Yeah,
like with their taking over their desktop and stuff.
Yes.
So arguably they could say that they did it first, but
yeah. Well, another big tech company stepping into that space. Yeah, it's an interesting, wasn't it? Like, where does the definitions of AI agent start and stop? OpenAI very much claiming this is an agent. I think it is, right. Like, in terms of how certainly how I understand it and how I perceive agents, this is an AI agent, but it is really not very good. Is also the feedback that's coming through. There's been so many people that have just gone and tried it with various use cases, and it's just kind of gone a bit bananas, or it is just a bit rubbish. It's kind of needing human input quite a lot, to the point where you're like, well, if I was going to make a reservation, on OpenTable, it's just going to be way quicker for me to do it. I don't trust it enough to do it on my behalf anyway. So even if it did manage to do something, I'm going to have to go through and check that everything is correct. There's very, very few scenarios, it feels like right now, that you would let it just go off undo in the way that it's intended to do it. Obviously, it's still sort of in this research mode. They, as I say, they've been very transparent about it not being perfect yet, but it feels like there's more examples where it's gone wrong than when it's gone right. Certainly in this very, very initial reaction phase. So yeah, is it going to take your job? No. Is it going to be useful day-to-day life? Probably not yet, at least. But is it impressive? Absolutely. Does it mark a really big step forward? Again, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we were talking about before the show. We were talking about directionally. It's a big thing. I think my first reaction, I said to you, was like, this just doesn't feel like the future of agents. Like running a virtual browser, like it's just slow, and like making an AI use all of the analog tools of like a human.
Yeah.
So like a mouse and a keyboard and like clicking on stuff. It feels like, there's at least using APIs. But I think one comment that they made in the video was that this enables AI to get access to websites and tools that they would otherwise not have access to, because if there's no API or no other way of accessing particular tools or websites, then the only way is through the web in a human way. And this is how they do it. And I guess it'll just get better at like figuring that stuff out. And people are going to have to design apps and websites with that in mind, right? In future, if they want that access. But I can't help but think, this is certainly a transitional phase at some point. The world's going to change a lot, and it's going to be, AI is going to be communicating with these tools and these websites and data stores in different ways in the future. Maybe using a completely different language and just something that's more efficient and quicker.
Yeah,
because there's only so much you can go. The World Wide Web is you're only going to be able to go at a certain pace, and AI can go at the speed of light. So it's just a massive bottleneck right now. But directionally, it's cool, and like you can see the direction that's going in.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing, isn't it, to think about? Certainly we've got this AI technology, we've got these agents, and it does kind of feel like, because the world is designed for humans, everything around us is designed for humans, even like say computers, screens, keyboards, mouse, microphone. Like everything about it is about how we are designed and how we are then compatible with this technology. Whereas with agents, why on earth would you give it a keyboard? Why on earth would you give it, a mouse to try and go up and click? Do you know what I mean? People are watching it, and it takes a couple of seconds because of the way it is working. It takes a screenshot, processes a screenshot, works out, right, okay, I need to get my mouse from here to here, and then click. Like, all of that's taking time, obviously, to process, and then the actual physical, like, you can't just teleport the mouse. You have to physically scroll it across. Do you know what I mean? And that's because that's how humans have worked. And so a lot of the feedback has been, and it's funny, there's another point, isn't there, about how suddenly we've become impatient for this thing to do stuff. But you're watching it and you're like, oh, come on, 2 seconds to click a button, come on.
Yeah.
But that is because of the limitation that you've just described. It's designed for a human. You've got this like computer trying to do it. But we also talked about, if a website, because a website is a thing that you see and that you click around and whatever, that's because we're human. If you then try and map that into a like truly digital sense, there's ways, right? Like, you can almost create a mapping from this user interface and all the sort of various bits of functionality that exist on it, the clicks, scrolls, hovering. There's so many things that you design when you think about a website. If you can create like a mapping of that into a representation that an AI agent can understand without having to like screenshot it and process the image, like it's like, bam, there's your representation. And also within that, you've got all of the APIs, or all of the sort of, when a user does this, then that it's got all of that mapped out for it. All of a sudden you kind of remove all of that slowness and all of that pain that people seem to be talking about. So how does it go from what we're looking at to where it's gonna get to?
Well, I think the web as we know it is got a limited lifespan now. I think in general, like using voice for stuff, having chips in your head to do stuff. But like, I honestly think that like HTML web pages and stuff, there's only so much time that's left for them. There's not going to exist, and that's why Google has to adapt as well. We're not going to be using that stuff. So
it's terrifying. It really is terrifying. Although it does beg the question, right now, as we say, they've put a huge amount of scrutiny that humans are going to need to, like, authentication, prove that you are who you say you are, payments, approving stuff, pre-reading, like, these things do make mistakes right now. Does that, for a human to actually be able to do that, does the human need to be able to watch? Do you know what I mean? Does it need to be able to watch?
That's not going to happen as well. Like, there's going to be other ways of like proving identity, digital ways of proving identity, and your agent can like be the arbiter of those, I guess. It does make sense, and I think, to be sitting there, like, if you to be able to do that. I mean, to a certain degree, but like not in the way that it is now. I think it's going to be something completely different for that. Like, you're going to give it your keys effectively to your wallet, which will I guess you'd always get to give it's like giving your kid pocket money or something, isn't it? Or you learn to go down the shops or whatever. You're going to give it a certain amount of money in its own wallet to do its own thing, and maybe it has its own passwords or whatever, however that future web looks like. Anyway, should we move on to story 2? I feel like we could go on forever on that.
I mean, yes, totally. Before we do, I did want to talk about there's a couple of funny little snippets that people have mentioned about how, like, these agents are like fallible, obviously, still. So, and worth saying, these aren't necessarily about the operator specific operator from OpenAI specifically. These, this agentic technology has come out through sort of more indie routes, I suppose. People are developing it, but this is the first sort of like proper commercial release, apart from maybe the Claude example you talked about. Anyway, so it might not be about operator, but just about this agentic technology anyway. But one example, one user talked about how they'd asked it to book me a table for dinner tonight, and it resulted in this agent effectively suggesting, cool, let's go to whatever site it was and buy a table. So totally like misunderstanding that. Another one was help me work out how I can cool down my bedroom. resulted in the agent suggesting that they buy an ice sculpture, which I thought maybe that isn't actually such a bad idea. Maybe that is I don't know, an effective way to
short-lived, I imagine.
Yeah. And another example here, play me some cool jazz, effectively resulted in it giving it a weather report about how it's going to be cool in the next week or so. So yeah, maybe that's a user prompting failure, but again, this agentic stuff is even though you think you're giving it the right task, it can just totally go off and do things that you don't want it to do.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, yes.
Cool. So Stargate. So Project Stargate is something that President Trump, newly appointed President Trump, mentioned. So $500 million. $500 million. Investment. A billion. I know billion. It's 500 billion. It seems like suddenly felt like it's too big a number. It's not, is it? It's $500 billion over the next 4 years. So they've already got 80 billion from Microsoft, 25 billion from SoftBank, 11 billion from Oracle.
Wow.
So like these are all. I don't think they got the whole 500 billion, but over the next 4 years, and you can see like people are going to want to invest in this. Like, AI is going to die in the next 4 years, and like, he's not going to be able to fulfill his promise of this. Like there's money coming into this space, and it's going to be no problem in like scooping that money up. So, and I think it was a total contrast to the announcement we got in the UK about UK becoming a hub for AI, right, in the world, with our super high taxes for businesses, and like not mentioning like how we're going to like encourage people to come in, and not really saying a lot, right? We're just going to do it, and just got to trust us. And this is how much money we're going to put in it. We're going to build data centers. We're already building data centers. They're already underway. They already put money into it, like ahead of like Trump's administration. Like in Texas, like the massive like data center they're building there for AI. They're going to really focus on like cheap energy, because like with all like AI and the whole need of it it's going to be cheap, right? You need cheap energy,
100%.
and any thriving economy as well thrives on cheaper energy. So he spoke specifically about specific project. Not only that, it's happening. It's like they're going ahead with this stuff. So it's not like, oh, we're going to do that, So like, I think it was like, really impressive. It's 100,000 jobs that he's talking about like creating by with this fund and like this investment in AI.
Mm-hmm.
I think some other interesting kind of stuff that kind of came out of that. And I mean, I guess everyone watching has probably seen the news. I don't need to mention like that Sam Altman was there from OpenAI, Larry Ellison from Oracle, and the other guy, Mr. Son. I can't remember, his first name's quite difficult to pronounce, but like from SoftBank. So they were there, but they're not the only players. They're not the only people that are going to benefit from this investment. Definitely Microsoft is as well. So the other company, and Google as well. So other companies are again. I mentioned Tesla, which I thought was interesting, given how close he is to Trump, Elon Musk, and XAI, and he's kind of like came out on social media and kind of taken a couple of jabs at it.
Yes, I've seen this,
which I thought was really interesting, considering how close he is to the Trump administration, and like the fact that it's AI and he's got XAI and Grok and obviously all the AI that's in the Tesla technology, and all the AI that's in Optimus and the humanoids, and all the AI that's in Neuralink, and probably all the AI that helps launch spaceships, all of that stuff. And somehow, like, I'm sure he will probably be part of it at some point. There's 100 billion now upfront pledged, and so it'll be 100 billion over the next, or 500 over the next 4 years. So
wow, that the fact that it's the announcement. So I mean, in terms of the pace that it's moved through, Trump has been inaugurated. He's now the president. He's made a number of pledges across a number of different areas, and I'm sure there's another fun discussion to be had about some of those. But the 500 billion in AI specifically is huge. Like that's a massive commitment. And I think what's really interesting is when you made the comparison to the UK announcement last week, and our reaction to that, and the reaction just generally has kind of been like, cool, okay, finally we're we're acknowledging it. It's a bit wishy-washy. It's not a huge amount of real detail in exactly how that's going to manifest. Whereas this, you've got this $500 billion pledge, and bam, on day one, 100 billion is there. Go. Oh, and it's not just like, let's plan it, let's work out what we want to do with that money. It's, here's all the things that we know that we need to do, like supercharge them, get them quicker, do it faster, make the US like the real leader in the world for this technology.
It's a totally different attitude to like making things happen, like, isn't it? I think that's just shows the cultural differences and how the US embraces entrepreneurship and people succeeding and doing well. Whereas in this country, if you do well, you're kind of frowned upon and looked at, and. Yeah. But there's a number of interesting things that kind of mentioned like within there, and I think Larry Ellison mentioned about the transition from AGI to ASI. So we haven't quite even got AGI yet, but we're already talking about ASI. So AGI is actual general intelligence.
Yeah.
Is it actual?
Artificial
general intelligence. Yeah. I did this sound right. Artificial general intelligence, where effectively, an AI, it can match a human on a variety of different tasks. So they're as good as a human on a number of different tasks. That's AGI, and there's a number of different benchmarks and way of calculating that. And it's kind of, again, a bit like what is an agent? It's like what is AGI? It's kind of like a bit of a grey area. But AGI is coming. But then ASI is artificial superintelligence, where actually the AIs can start thinking for themselves and coming up with new stuff themselves. So whereas today, like an AI, things like ChatGPT, even unless you fed it that information, it can't come up with anything new. It just knows what it knows because what you told it. But when it becomes really valuable is when an AI can start inventing things and coming up with new solutions to problems, where it really becomes exciting and scary, right? Because this is exponential again, as we mentioned. If it can start teaching itself to be better and start coming up with its own inventions and ideas and plans, that's insane. Yeah. But the impact on things like healthcare, all sorts of different industries is going to be huge, because it's going to, they're talking about, Larry was talking about, we're going to just start, we're going to start knocking them off. We're going to start curing all different cancers one by one, like they're going to get knocked down. And he spoke specifically about this product. He was like, oh yeah, it's nice saying it, but like, what about it? But like, he said that pretty much when you've got a tumor, that like little bits of that tumor kind of floats around in your bloodstream. And using AI, you can kind of take a blood test, and using AI, you can actually pick up on those little bits of tumor that are like floating around in your bloodstream. Wow. And then the amazing bit was then you can like go and take a sample of that cancer, find out what cancer it is. That's before it's like you've noticed. It's like a really, really early warning system. Like before you even know that you've got some sort of tumor, it's like before it's even probably big enough to like see it, like it'd be a problem. Yeah. You can then go and find out what the cancer is. Yeah. You can then go and create you a bespoke vaccine or medication for your own body. So for that cancer, for you, and have it ready within 48 hours. Wow. So it's like literally a bespoke medication for your body and your situation. And that's just one example he gave of like how it's going to change cancer detection and medication. And you start just thinking about all of the different industries. Once an AI can come up, you potentially can solve global warming. Yeah. Potentially can solve how to get people to Mars and build a civilization on Mars, and how to create an environment where humans can live. Like it's beyond insane. And again, like all this stuff we've in the past, I think, you're younger than me, Jack, but like in the past, all of this was science fiction, right? You talk about it like, wow, like one day we had this, and you still think, wow, one day, but we're talking now, a year or two away.
It's when,
like it's not when. It's like, what? Not one day. It's like, well, this is our lifetime now, and because we're still like so on the edge of it, and people, like we said in other podcasts, people walking around not knowing what's coming, it's gonna just smash people in the face, right? Because it's gonna be here before we know it, all of this stuff.
I mean, it's this is insane. Here he goes again. How many times? I mean, we we've gone from $500 billion investment to, okay, what does that mean? What does it get to? Okay, so there's practical things that okay, we're going to build data centers and we're going to build, this and energy and all this like infrastructure and everything that needs to go around to make it happen. But the so what is these kind of these milestones. And when we talked at the beginning about this roadmap of AI, like, AGI is very much on there as a thing. ASI is again on there, and it's it's after, but it feels like it's going to be very soon. It's very much within our reach. And I like to think about, when we talk about how quickly it's going to happen, or like just generally everything in AI, like I think we as humans, because of the way we are, like every judgment you have, every thought you have, every opinion that you make on something is broadly based on your experiences. It's based on what you're taught. It's based on what you know, based on what you have been told by people who are more experienced than you. But everything with AI is going to completely transform that. And you can go back and you can look at any big technology revolution, and the what people would say before versus what they say after. The concept of being able to drive, the concept of the internet, the concept of mobile phones, like all of these things before, in theory, or maybe one day we can create, but then it happened. With AI, it's exactly the same, and it's just going to be absolutely bonkers. The kinds of things that even today, like even us who are really, like, I'm trying so hard not to let my preconceptions define what I think about these things, because it's like, now the possibilities are really, really wild. And even we are going to sit back, look back in 5 years, maybe at this video, and go, oh my gosh, we weren't even close. We didn't even think about it. And it's just, I don't know what the best example is, but this concept of exponential growth, I think, is really, really, really like a big driver of that. As okay, what's he on about? What does that even mean? But right now we've got these like relatively capable things, these AI models existing, and they're finite or whatever. And as you get more and more and more, and as you get more and more intelligent, like there becomes like a tipping point. And I studied maths, so the way I like to think of it maybe is that once you get a number which is bigger than 1, and you raise it to some exponent, and you kind of do that infinite, like that as a function will tend to infinity, right? It will literally tend to infinity, and however big the number is that you're raising it to is how quickly it will go. And there's probably a nice articulate way of visualizing this or explaining this, but I like, in my mind, this is exactly how AI is going. And all we're doing is we are making that number bigger than 1, and we are raising that exponent to be bigger. And when it goes, it is going to go so fast. It's maybe right now we're increasing slightly. It's going to go.
Yeah, it's not about S curve eventually. Exactly, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just it will almost be, in my, I don't know how it's going to be, it will almost be instant. If we achieve this concept of ASI, where it can learn, it can teach, it has the concept of new things rather than just, well, I've been taught this and whatever. That, scale it up, bam. You can, why can't you just solve this cure to cancer overnight? Why can't you just solve it in a minute?
Mm-hmm.
The only reason it's taken years is because of that's just how it's been in humans. Like, mm-hmm. It just takes time. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's some things where that's not true, right? Like maybe I'm going overboard. Like, you can't solve cancer without actually testing the drug, or doing tests in humans, or the cure doesn't work overnight. It takes a year for it to actually work, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, there are some things where obviously we're going off the boil, but there are other things like, if you can solving for flying cars, let's say something mental like that, like, oh, flying cars, like in theory, yeah, it could happen. Doesn't add up. Like the maths just doesn't work. But with some kind of army of ASI, like, oh yeah, solved it. Done the maths. This is it. This is how you build it.
Yeah, or like that's a rubbish idea because, and do I want to do this instead?
That proves it's not possible.
What about teleportation?
Yeah,
just do that. Oh yeah, we solved the.
I mean, can you imagine? I mean, we were talking the other day about immortality, for goodness sake. Like, it's almost like everything we talk about, oh, you cure cancer, oh yeah, all these things which are just mind blowing right now, and you think surely it can't get any more impressive than that. Driverless cars, the ability to talk, the ability to reason, the ability to create poetry, art, like all these things. Like, there's no way that could happen. There's nothing more it could possibly do. And then for whatever reason, you go, how about this? And it's like, and it just keeps going. And it's just, honestly, it's insane.
It's true. I mean, like, obviously already, talking about immortality, it's already extending people's lives if we're detecting cancers early. So it's already extending people's life. Then you can think about artificial organs or artificial brain or whatever. And then, why not like work out how to solve our aging or be able to transport your consciousness into a digital being or whatever. Like this, let's not go into immortality. Like, we can probably get a whole episode and try and talk about that. But it's not like you could see it. It's not like I say in science fiction where you can go, wow, like this is all very much fiction, very much in fiction land. And now it's like I just don't know where the limit is now. I don't know what's not going to be possible.
Man,
I think one last thing before we move on to number 3 is like, I haven't really looked into this. I don't want to like make too big a point on it, but definitely Trump signed an executive order to cancel the AI safety project that the previous administration had. Now, I don't know how limited, how much, and I can totally see why he would do it, because that's going to stifle speed and innovation. If you have to go through like a number of different red tape and hoops, like that's just going to slow you down. And like right now, Trump doesn't want to be slowed down on this stuff. He wants to become like the number one world in crypto, the number one country in crypto, the number one country in AI, right? And I mean, I'm completely politically agnostic. But you can see like how, the previous administration, like they were trying to like, they're trying to get rid of crypto, not get rid of crypto, but like just trying to suppress it and keep it down, and like it's not going to happen, and try and ignoring it effectively. And you can't ignore it. Like, you can't ignore Bitcoin. It's not going to go away, certainly now. Same with AI. Like I didn't see them investing like $500 billion in AI. The monetary system and AI are two massive S curves that are colliding, and they're both going to be huge in the next 5-10 years of our lives. And you have to embrace it. And I think that's why I'm a bit depressed in the UK, because they've ignored all of this, still do really. It was just words last week. And but I think it's definitely going to set up the US to be the powerhouse that it already is, and continue that for years to come. But the AI safety bit, eliminating that completely, I don't know. Like, it's expecting then the organizations to police themselves a little bit, and when they're looking to be fastest and first and make money, we already see stuff that they're releasing at ridiculous pace. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and what happens. I know that the UK have got an AI safety board and that, so we'll see how that plays out as well. So
it's really tricky, isn't it? Because on the one hand, certainly when we talk, it is almost a little bit deflating being in the UK. There's a new feature. Well, you're not going to get it for a few months. We're investing in all this technology so that we can literally revolutionize our country. UK is like, we're going to try and use it, or we're going to try and entice companies in to start using it. It's really, really, we just really are behind. It just genuinely does feel like we're years behind in terms of where we need to be, and that can be really, really tricky to, that could be a hard pill to swallow. And in terms of, as you say, where you see it going, it's like the US are just going to get ahead. Like it just does feel like they're going to get ahead. And even, over in China, there's some really, really interesting stuff going on. And, if you view it like a race, we are definitely not winning it. Like we're well in the back, maybe not even in the camera pan,
There's no incentive for to start a business in the UK and do. It is not a great place to start. Taxes are so high for businesses across the board, like corporation tax.
Yeah.
Dividends, capital gains tax. Like as individuals, it's bad. Like I saw a stat the other day: 10,800 people left. 10,800 millionaires left the country last year.
I've heard that.
And it's scaling up every year because it's not a great place to be if you don't want to run a business or want to like retain your wealth.
Yeah, it's tricky, and again, like we're not politicians, we're not a political show, but just from looking at it objectively, it's very tricky to be in the UK right now and feel excited. But then you talk about AI safety, and one sort of thing you can do is you can think about all the cool stuff that AI is going to do, and it is going to do it, right? We very much believe that, but there's also a lot of bad, and it's like really bad. It's like if you like this same technology for good is being made available for technology for bad. And there, again, it's humanity. There are bad people in the world. There are people that have bad intentions, and they want to just do not nice things. And this technology is going to give them a lot of power to do that. And that's where the AI safety does come in. And that's just, again, there's a preconception, right? Like good and bad, crime and, innovation. And, that's how it works. There's also this whole another black box that you can't, again, even comprehend of what could happen that's wrong. You can lean into the sci-fi realm again and think about AI taking over the world and, wanting to exist and humanity, there's all that kind of stuff. And again, a whole list of things that you can't even right now even comprehend. And the AI safety measures are what help to control that and stifle that. So the fact that there's an AI race across the globe, because it's, that's just, again, how humanity works, this politics game that's played, it means that, as you say, the AI safety stuff is just holding them back. So get rid of it, because you need to do anything you can to win this race. And it's a bit worrying, because you kind of need to say, at what point do you say, right, let's actually consider the safety thing properly now? Mm-hmm. And if I were to be candid, I'd say that we've gone past that point. Already with the technology that exists today, the sort of the scope for bad that it can be used for is already mind-blowing, and it's only going to get worse. Even last week in the news, we talked about that voice, the newest voice model, and even that, you can think about how many bad things can be just with that technology. So as it continues to grow in capability, the scope for bad increases. So whilst I think America are doing really well for winning the race, and that's really inspiring if you want to live in a prospering economy, the fact that they're not taking the safety thing seriously is very, very concerning. But from another angle, if they're not taking it seriously, and the safety thing is just getting blown out of the water, then what's the point in anyone taking it's all or nothing. You need to constrict the entire industry. You need to make sure that it's all adhering to this, whatever it is that we want it to adhere to, or no one does. Because if one bit gets through, well, then there's no point in everyone else trying to be safe. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it feels like it's all or nothing. And because they're not in, it feels like we're hindering ourselves for what? Like for what purpose?
Oh, yeah, I don't think you can put in like rules and regulation. I think that'd be really hard, because it will slow innovation down, but also there's going to be people that more bad actors that aren't going to like follow those guidelines and do things. I feel like it's a little bit like the only way that we're going to fight bad AI, is with AI, and the AI safety will be AI, effectively agents defending. So I almost think of it like a virus checker, where someone's exploited something as an AI, I'd like plug in that hole and that vulnerability. Yeah. Problem with that is just reactive all the time. Like you have to wait for something to happen and then react to it. Yeah. But with AI, maybe the pace of the reaction will be quick. But I can't see how. Often when you try and put this red tape and stuff in, you're stopping the good guys who are following the rules, and like it doesn't actually help for the bad stuff. So anyway,
yes, sorry.
Should we go to the project story number 3?
Yes, story number 3. So story number 3 is all about DeepSeek. Now DeepSeek this week have released a new model called R1. So who are DeepSeek? We mentioned briefly they're a Chinese company. There's quite a lot of history, around the people that founded the company. They go way back into other sort of tech firms, and I think it was all around finance and trading, and that's where they were focused. But yeah, May 2023. So again, not really been a player for very long. DeepSeek was founded, and their mission was to build and develop open source, cost-effective AI to compete with the West. So again, kind of the politics is coming in again, but I guess China is very aware of the rapid innovation that's going on in the West, and they want to be able to compete with that. And DeepSeek is one of the companies that have that mission. And this is exactly what they've done. So throughout 2024, they've released a series of LLMs, the DeepSeek LLM series, and every single one is, for at the time has been a real competitor to the models that are coming out of the West. And along the way, they've been making them open source. So this R1 is just sort of the newest one that they've released, and I think possibly the most impressive because it is really pushing the sort of the boundaries of LLMs, even competing with OpenAI's and other big tech firms' most sophisticated models. But it's open source, and this is kind of the key thing that makes it so sort of impressive in the community. What does it mean to be open source? I thought it worth sort of clarifying what that actually means, particularly in this context. So it literally means within R1 as a concept, you can go and download the code that runs the model, and you can run it on your own local hardware. So you're not relying on a model that exists in the cloud that's protected by these corporations. You can download it. Here it is. You can run it yourself, away from the rest of the world. You don't have to be connected to anybody. You can just run it. And that is really quite something. And open source as an entire concept is a really good thing. It helps innovation and accessibility and all these other things that you don't get with private corporations that keep them locked up. But suddenly what you've now unlocked is like a real capability for people to run locally. What does it mean for developers and things? It means you can train it yourself. You can give it knowledge that these other models aren't trained on by default because it's your own data. It's locked away. It's not on the internet. Like OpenAI's models aren't trained on it because it's yours. You can now download your own version of this model and give it this data. And so really, really quickly and easily and cheaply create these very bespoke, very, very capable models. So that again is really, really important. Also really important from a research perspective, because not only can you see the model itself and use it and download it, you can also understand, you get access to the entire architecture, how they built it, how they trained it, what weights they use, like everything around the technical build up of these models. They're giving everyone complete transparency of how to see it. It's like getting to peer into everything that's kept behind closed doors. And in the tech world, like a lot of stuff is. So this is quite revolutionary. And for some reason, open source AI has become quite a big thing, and DeepSeek are just one of the players.
So is it gated as well? So I mean by that I mean, like all of the big corporations and players, like quite rightly, it stops you from doing stuff. It stops you from. There's different levels, right? I think OpenAI is one of the more strict, where it kind of you ask it to do something bad, it'll stop you. Like there's guardrails in place. So this model, are you getting the bare bones without guardrails, or is there a level of guardrails in there?
That's a really good question. In all honesty, I don't know, but what I think is that effectively you're getting like an out of the box working product, and as part of that, I think the guardrails are put in place. So what you are getting is effectively a safe model. So you can't tell it to do something really nasty. Do you know what I mean? Like construct a plan of how to commit a crime. Like you can't ask it to do that. I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure you can't. However, there is this concept of jailbreaking of these models, and there's a big community around this. I think, I don't know, probably some not very nice people that are interested in it, and some just for like the sake of innovation, right? Like if I can jailbreak it, then it's not good enough. But I think that there is a whole movement around how do you get these open source models and kind of strip away all of the guardrails that you talked about.
Well, if this is open source with the code, then
surely you
it doesn't
can.
matter.
Yeah.
You don't have to jailbreak it. You just change the code.
Yeah, I don't know enough of exactly how the technology works.
I mean, OpenAI talks about open source models, but they're not.
Yeah,
it's closed source.
Yeah,
and so but if this is truly a GitHub, effectively,
I think it is. Yeah,
then you don't need to jailbreak it. You just change the code to how you want to. I guess you got to understand how to understand it.
What I don't know. So obviously, when you're training in LLMs, you kind of in the same way that you train a human, like this is good, this is bad, like when this happens, this is what I want you to say, or like you're giving it all the knowledge and it's absorbing it, and that's how it helps to predict, right, how it outputs. That process is obviously taking place for these models. So DeepSeek R1 will have been trained with millions, probably billions of parameters and like knowledge. Now, once it's trained, I think this, like what we're talking about, is almost like, can you untrain those things, or like can you, the guardrails that can you take those away? And I don't know, and I don't know whether it's part of that training process or whether it's like it's right. We've trained it now, and now we're going to build all these barriers around it and keep build. Whether it's that or whether it's the actual core model, don't know. Like really not an expert in exactly how that works, but it's a really good question. One other really important part of this open sourcing, and again within open source as a concept, there are levels to this, but it kind of is branded as licensing. So you're talking about licensing within open source software. So you can make things open source, but the licensing maybe restricts you from using it for anything commercial. What DeepSeek have done is they've used, I think it's a well-known license just called the MIT license or something, but basically means that you can do whatever you want with it. There's absolutely no constraints to what you can do with it. You can use it for your commercial, you can use it in your business, you can use it within your products, you can use it for everything. And that's totally cool. They're not trying to make money from it. There you go, we built it, use it. Like innovate, go and innovate, build things that makes things better. It also probably means build things to do bad, but they're not. That's possibly not something they've thought about too much. So that's what we're talking about. In terms of how good it is, there's a number of benchmarks that are used at the moment for LLMs. I think there's again another really interesting topic about how do we actually, they're becoming so good against human benchmarks that we use. They're developing more and more LLM based benchmarks so you can say this one is better than this one. But in terms of how it performs against ones that have been traditionally used and ones that are used by humans as well, mathematical reasoning is absolutely exceptional. I couldn't find much actual data in terms of what percentile it sits in for that, but broadly it's like exceptional at maths. From coding and problem solving, in again exceptional performance. There's a scores 2,000 and something for the test they use, but the mind-blowing stat is it outperforms 96.3% of human programmers. So if you get 100 humans, like human programmers, to take this test, this model will get better results than 96 of them, which is pretty mega. And then again, general reasoning benchmarks were really super impressive. Worth saying that DeepSeek R1 is specifically designed for this kind of stuff, so mathematical and coding and like general reasoning style challenges, rather than like models that maybe you're more familiar with, which would be used for very like lots and lots of different things. You can ask it anything. DeepSeek R1 is very much built for like technical problems, and so they've absolutely smashed the benchmarks. And comparing it to the stuff from OpenAI, so GPT-4 and O1, so it absolutely smashes GPT-4 in these benchmarks. It is significantly better, and in terms of O1, it is pretty much on par, if not better, in some of these benchmarks as well. So in terms of that goal of competing with the West, like actually they've not only created something which measures up to it, they've created something which exceeds what's publicly available to us today. From those Western companies. Talk a lot about OpenAI just because it's probably the most popular and well known, but again would compete with all those other big tech companies as well. But again, possibly the most impressive thing about this, on top of the performance, is the cost. So it's actually significantly cheaper than the OpenAI models from two lenses. So firstly, the compute. So obviously, every time you want it to do something, okay, solve me this really difficult coding problem, there's a certain amount of compute that's required to complete that task for each of these models, which is effectively like the hardware and the energy that it consumes. And DeepSeek R1 is significantly more efficient in terms of how much compute it requires to solve these tasks than the OpenAI models. And then when you combine in the sort of the open source angle and the fact that you're not having to like commit to an API fee or whatever sort of fee, that there's lots of different structures around how much you have to pay to use these models. But when you consider running it on your own hardware, like obviously that plays in massively. So there's one user like recently that's been using R1 this week has said they sent 200,000 API requests to R1, and it cost them like around 50 cents, which when you compare the same usage with an OpenAI model, it's about 90% cheaper, which is like, so it's not even like it's, you know, £4.50 instead of £5. We're talking like, you know, £1 instead of £10. It's really, really big. The kind of cost efficiencies that we're able to see here as well. So that's kind of the summary of what we're seeing. Really, really big news that, you know, in terms of this innovation, the fact that China and other countries in Asia are able to produce this kind of capability and really rival the West is a massive deal for innovation and for people. The open source thing is really, really big for that. And a lot of people, some other sort of, I guess, minor news that came out, was it's not minor, maybe minor in perspective, is that OpenAI, Sam Altman announced that O3 Mini, I believe, is coming to all ChatGPT users in the next few weeks. And a lot of people are attributing that play to the release of R1, because obviously if you're just a general ChatGPT user, you get to use it for free. And so using O3 Mini, which again, like, don't know the details of exactly how impressive that is, but it's obviously going to be one of the most performant models from OpenAI. The fact that he and OpenAI have released that for free, a lot of people are saying is because of this innovation from DeepSeek. So that's the kind of impact that we're talking about, and obviously that's good for everyone because they're getting access to the best stuff for free.
Yeah, it's all one up every time, isn't it? Like, racing to release these models just to, and you know, they're all like slightly different and all slightly different, better at one thing than another. I think we'll move on to story number 4 now, which is
absolutely.
Google's DeepMind, which is called Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking, which is in response to OpenAI and their thinking models.
Yes.
But I think the level of thinking that you see within the Gemini model is much greater. You see kind of every single step of its kind of thinking along the way, whereas OpenAI kind of hides a little bit of that and just gives you kind of like some of the steps along the way in that thinking. So it's much more detailed in thinking. So it can help you kind of understand where it's gone off track, where it's kind of hallucinating, or it's kind of missed the point on something. And it gives you that little bit more kind of visibility. But, you know, again, this model already kind of, you know, is exceptional in kind of all the benchmarks. So exceptional in kind of the mathematics and the scientific reasoning, you know, multimodal benchmarks across the board. It's like really, really good.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like cheating, like in an exam, right? In a university exam, you don't have to know the whole topic; you just have to know what's in the test and just train for that.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, a lot, you know, it's better than all of these. Like, it's already the top of the LM Arena's leaderboard, which actually is a different thing. So we'll come to that in a sec. But you know, it's already winning on these benchmarks. So like, it's already doing really well. And we always we're making, quite rightly, I think, comparisons to OpenAI's models, because probably across the board universally they probably are still the best. Now, people are tribal. People would argue that. I mean, I prefer Claude 3.5 Sonnet for coding right now. But, you know, OpenAI stuff is getting pretty good as well, and you know, it's on a par. But I think it's, you know, top in the, you know, the LM Arena, if no one's like used it before, it's a site that you can go to. and you can put in a prompt, and you'll randomly get two language models reply, and you vote on which one you think is the best.
Okay, nice.
So, but you don't know, it's a blind test, so you don't know which one's which. So people pick the one they like best, and then they create a leaderboard like from that. So
that's a good idea.
And there's also like a side by side, so you can literally choose the models that you want to test side by side and get the results. So, so I think probably across the board, in my opinion, like OpenAI models probably still, are better. But like, these people, the other models are kind of beating these tests and doing better in these tests. But again, they want to show that because it's good publicity, and then they're kind of training them for those tests. But of course, I'm not suggesting that they're not doing anything else. Of course, their models are amazing. They're all amazing now. But and it's hard to say what one's better than the other. And it's a bit like last week we were saying, is there space for all 5, 6, 7 general knowledge, and maybe we see the different models actually like specializing a little bit more in different areas, and that's, I guess, a discussion point. But
time will tell, won't it? Yeah, it is interesting as well because I think there will be certain industries, certain countries, certain economies, certain individuals even who are adopting this technology quicker than others. I think you go around a lot of people right now, across the world, and you ask them about AI, there will be a very, very vast range of answers that you get back in terms of how much people are aware of it, how much people are actually adopting it, and how much people are using it, and indeed what they're using it for. So it does beg the question of, particularly from a media perspective, and that is us, right? We're consuming the people's responses to these models. What are the companies advertising? What benchmarks are being used? What are people saying about it? What is this LLM arena? That's just one other source. We are consumers of that. Like the true like rating, I guess, or true ranking of these models is probably really difficult to actually bring to life. Because this LLM arena, maybe people are just asking it really, really basic things. Maybe everyone goes there with their coding problems because you're getting 2 answers for the price of 1. It's really difficult to say, and therefore, in that arena, it's a very consumer-based judgment. And maybe in the coding world, it's a very, very, that's I say niche isn't maybe the right word, but that's quite sort of, there's quite a clear-cut definition of what the use case is there, and so the winner in that space is maybe quite, I don't know. I guess the point is like how can we truly know which is the most performant, or which would truly take us, which one's truly going to innovate the quickest, allow us to hit those other things in the roadmap as we discussed. Like, who knows? It's overall all really, really impressive. But yeah, this Flash model sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's just moving so fast, and it's hard to keep up. Like, what is they're all really good at doing lots of stuff, but trying to stay, what do you need to work out which is the best to offer for just general tasks? It does it well, but obviously it's going to get better and better. And a couple of things it's worth mentioning, like it's got a 1 million token context window. So to put that into perspective, I mean, it's about 5 times larger than the current OpenAI models. So that gives massive, you a lot of space. It's massive, but it's like, we talk about this a lot, me and you. Like, the 2 things that really we feel like is limiting just for general applications and day to day is like the context window, like how much you can take in one go, in one hit, and like process it.
Yeah.
But probably even more so is like memory, right? How much can it retain
and
remember about you? Because there's so many more applications. You can remember everything. There's so many more applications, and you come up with this time and time again. And we're building some SaaS tools and things like that. That it would be just fantastic if it just remembered everything. But you've got to keep reminding it that it's like of the facts.
Yes.
And that's challenging. So, but what the context windows are getting bigger all the time, and this is just another step in that 1 million total context window.
Yeah, I mean, 1 million sounds really good. I mean, obviously the comparison is probably more like useful. 5 times longer is pretty mega, because right now it's already very impressive, but as you say, it's also very limiting. And what does the 1 million do? Like, it's maybe actually blurs the lines, because right now we almost assume, certainly when I'm using these tools, when we're using these tools, what we find is, right, we know that the context window is relatively limited. We know that the memory functionality is, again, limited. So let us make sure that we always have like a solid base of knowledge that we can come back to and make sure that, right, we've executed on these tasks. Maybe this was the plan that we originally made. Let's now move on to step 2, because it can't remember that it made that plan for us, if that makes sense. Now, if you go to 1 million, or you go longer, but it is still finite, then maybe you give it a little bit more trust or a little bit more leeway with how much you expect it to remember. But then, because it's so far back, you're like, will it remember that? Or when did I give it that knowledge? I don't know. And that might impact how capable it is, or like what direction it takes you in, because you think it remembers something that it doesn't. So yeah, I mean, I also would question how, like, is that true? Do you know what I mean? How do they measure the 1 million thing? Like, is it just as simple as you give it a fact, 1 million tokens worth of information, and then ask it to retrieve that fact, or that thing that you asked it to remember? Maybe is that a true measure of?
Well, I think the context window is slightly different to the memory, right? So the context window is like, it's how much you could give it in one go, like to process. So it's like literally how much can you paste into that box?
Yes.
And then get it to understand, like, get it to ask it a question about that information. So how much can you give it in one go? Whereas the memories are like a little bit different. Like it's.
Yeah, I'm definitely talking more about memory, aren't I? Really, is in terms of the limiting factor and that testing benchmark. I suppose context windows a little bit more easy to measure.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, it's literally, I guess.
In which case, is that like, how impressive is that really? I mean, I suppose there's lots of use cases, but like, is there harm in giving it? If you had a 1 million token piece of text that you wanted to give it, is it really hurt to give it to it in 5 chunks if the memory was perfect?
Yeah. Probably not. Because I guess it wouldn't matter. Yeah. So yeah.
And how often are we putting in text which is longer than, I don't know?
But yeah, maybe, and because it still does come down to the context window, I guess, to a certain degree. But I guess they are putting, OpenAI's got like a concept of memory where it can save stuff off in another place. We noticed the other day, didn't we? It's quite interesting that it used to be that OpenAI would, if you start a new chat, it only really kind of looks at what's in that chat. But now it's kind of, it will mix in what it knows about you and start sticking that into any new chats you create as well. So.
Yeah, and I love that. I give it as much detail as I can, because I know it's building up. This is silly, but it's building up a bit more of an understanding of all the things that are going on. Because often things aren't isolated in real life. The chats are, but if it can reach in and go, oh, you're doing that because you're doing this other thing. Oh yeah, I know that, and therefore the recommendation's actually better. So I'm giving it more to work with, because that memory's unreal. Anyway, that's another topic.
It's quite fun. I guess one last thing I'll mention is that it's in beta at the moment, but it's also free. So I think it's an interesting play by Google in that it's you get usage limits compared similar to OpenAI's $200 per month plan.
Whoa, okay.
So you're getting that for free and a kind of similar kind of
that's insane
amount of usage. I mean that must be costing them a fortune. Well, because I saw an interview the other day with Sam Altman, and he said they're losing money on their $200
a
month plan. People are using it a lot, and it takes a lot of computational power. And I guess there's already arguments about whether that's the way to go, and actually thinking models are not the best, but they're creating these mini models that are often equivalent but a lot smaller. But it's
interesting, isn't it? As you say, like this, we talk about this race. There's obviously the economical and country perspective. There's the tech giant perspective, and Google. Obviously, we know it's a player, but certainly when we talk, it seems a bit of an afterthought. You list through the players, you go, oh, and Google as well. Like it isn't quite there. It's certainly in my mind it is, in terms of its capability, but for whatever reason, it's not being. Well, I'm a test case of one, but
that's true. And I think it's where they came to the party, right? I mean, how often do you mention Llama from Facebook? That's even more so. Like probably list them off and don't like put them in, but and then you're really getting further down the chain when you're talking about Apple Intelligence.
Oh gosh,
how far behind are they? Seriously.
Yes.
So, I think we're going to wrap it up with a couple of other stories then. So, I think something that's shocking to me and goes a little bit against what we were saying about UK and their place in AI, and absolutely they're behind. Like Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, was trying to suggest that we're already up there and leading, and we just need to do something, which we're not going to specify, and we'll just continue to benefit from that. Which, sure, we've got great universities that have great research departments,
Absolutely,
but we've always had that, and that's the extent of it. We already said we don't have much hope, but shockingly, so the University of Bristol just unveiled something called, I'm not even going to be able to pronounce this, but Sambard, or it starts with an L, LSMAM. So I'm going to call it Sambard. Sambard AI, which is a $260 million supercomputer. So it uses AI to develop new drugs for vaccines.
Yep.
By simulating how molecules interact with the human body, like at an atomic level.
Wow.
So to give you an idea of some of the things that it's already doing and working on, or they expect it to be, or it's already being used for this actually. So for vaccines for Alzheimer's, treatments for heart disease, and improved melanoma detection. So
wow.
It's there, and so it's been described as among the top fastest AI supercomputers globally, which is shocking to me that's happening. And
yeah, that's insane.
Whether that's with the government or outside of the government, it's got private funding. I imagine it's probably private funding, but with the University of Bristol,
wow.
That's just amazing. So we were talking about earlier about what Larry Ellison was saying about the future of cancer
and medical.
detection.
Yeah.
This is happening, and it's happening in the UK. So, yeah. Hey, what does that say there? Oh, so the supercomputer's waste energy will be repurposed to heat local homes and businesses near its facility in Bristol. I have no idea how that works, but yeah.
Wow. There you go. The UK is, a leader.
So I mean, that was shocking, but I mean, exciting news for us. And I think any advancements in AI, which is helping healthcare and cure disease, and it's all good things, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, that's really nice to hear. And if Bristol are doing it, I imagine there are other really, really cool departments across the UK, particularly in these sort of educational establishments, which are doing some mind-blowing stuff that we just don't know about. Like as you say, I've not heard about that before.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly,
that's come out of the blue.
A global competitor in that space. So yeah.
And also news out of Tesla, their Optimus humanoid robot, which is coming. It's like, this is like science fiction again. Like this is like total science fiction. This is like there's one thing with AI in the digital realm. It's one time when you start talking about physical, like AI, and they're around and living with you. So like by the end of this year, they're gonna their goal is to be producing 600 Optimus humanoid robots a week.
Wow.
Now we spoke last week that Elon said it's going to 10x and 10x the next couple of years. In 2 years' time, it's going to be 500,000 to 1 million being built. And this is just a step in the direction. This is just like showing another commitment. But
that's amazing.
It's absolutely incredible. And this if they're planning this again, I keep laboring on the same point. It's done.
Yeah.
If it's going to be in production, they're not going to build 600 a week and then have them sitting there like dysfunctional humanoids that don't work. They've got to be functional, be able to do something.
Yes.
And they're going to be, the first lot are going to be hanging around the Tesla factories doing work in the Tesla factories. But if they can do work in the Tesla factories, they're going to work in other factories.
Yeah.
And it's only a matter of time before it becomes a consumer product.
Yeah.
We and you can buy, and they're doing the washing up.
I can't wait.
I mean, it's just stunning. I think that just feels like next level. It's
really cool.
It's the robotics and the humanoid part of it is amazing, but it's going to have an AI brain.
I think this is it, isn't it? It sounds certainly my impression of that. It sounds like they're confident in the hardware. The actual functionality of these robots. They can mimic humans well enough that they have huge amounts of the use cases. And perhaps right now the limitation is the thing, the chip, the thing that makes it do whatever it wants to do. So for them to commit to building 600 a week, is confirmation that the hardware bit is there. And based on all the discussion that we've been having around all the other bits today, and in other weeks, like the brain bit is not far away, is it?
Imagine having a humanoid robot that has got a brain with artificial super intelligence. So it's smarter than you. It can solve problems. It'll solve problems around the house with your DIY problems. But surely, at this point, maybe its movements is not perfect. It's a bit clunky. Well, with super intelligence, surely it can just sit there and go and work out that, I can do this faster, and I can actually just build. I just get the materials I need, and I can build like a new body for myself or new humanoids that are like even better than me. And you can see how this can take over, like really fast, like really badly. Like could potentially be bad. It could be really good, but it could be once they start building themselves and they got like not very nice plans for humanity. Like what?
Yeah, this is what we're trying to think about too much.
So yeah, it's scary. But anyway, we'll wrap it up there on the Tesla story. It's obviously just amazing that they're going to get those numbers out.
Yes,
I'm excited to see them, even if they do decide to destroy humanity. But just wrap us up with a couple of the last rapid fire stories, Jack.
Yes, a couple of rapid fire ones just to finish off. So one thing, Pope Francis has actually come out this week and has expressed his concern around AI. He's definitely talked about it from the sort of almost religious angle and the concept of real genuine truth and how AI might impact that. But he has come forward and has really, asked governments to conduct adopting this technology with due diligence. Really interesting to see a figure like that come forward and really talk about this space. LinkedIn this week are facing a lawsuit because they've used messages from their premium users, so you can have premium accounts on LinkedIn. They've been using conversation history of their premium users without consent to train their AI models.
Not nice.
That's a bit of a worry about how these companies are using our data. But the fact there's a lawsuit means that they're going to be held to account for that, hopefully. And another interesting one, in Belfast, they're using AI to trawl through hundreds of hours of CCTV for different cases. And the interesting thing is, I think they'll be using it for like real cases to help like supercharge those, but also they're going back in history for cases that have maybe been left unsolved because there is this, like, there's hundreds of hours of CCTV to go through, but it just never would have made sense to ask a human to do that. So they're actually able now to use that technology to go back and hopefully shed some light onto cases which have never previously been solved.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Wow.
There we go.
All right. Well, thanks for the discussion, Jack.
Yeah, I loved it.
Lots of lots more news next week. I'm sure. I'm sure it won't be a quiet week. But yeah, exciting. All of the things that are happening in the world, in the land of AI. So thanks very much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.